Good morning to everyone. We would like to start anytime soon. So maybe could you please take the seat? Thank you so much. All right, good. So the plan of this morning is that we will start with that budget discussion, which is kind of postponed from the day one, so that we distributed the draft decision yesterday. So there will be a discussion on the decision to be adopted. Then that followed by any other business. Then we go to LDCF, SCCF. And I would like to ask my co-chair to take the lead on the first item.
Yes, good morning again to those I haven't said good morning. On the budget decision, actually yesterday, the Secretariat distributed a new version of the budget decision, taking into account the comments made by the Council and presenting significant saving on the Secretariats and on the IEO side. And actually, I would like to ask if there are any objections to this new version of the decision, or if we can take it as approved. Argentina, please.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Good morning to all of you, colleagues that were not in the room before. We're not in condition to oppose the decision, but we would like to say that there has not been sufficient discussion on this proposal. There's been little time and some lines in the budget that are not clear to us. We would like that next time when we decide on a budget, and especially because we are in the replenishment, to see more efforts to have more savings and cut down costs. We know that all countries are suffering serious cuts. Just one example. There is a line in the budget that talks about salaries and benefits. Disaggregate that, in other words, to have more details. What are salaries? What are benefits? And I know that the Council doesn't do it line per line, but we'd like to see a bigger commitment to see that effort and those details in line per line in the future. Thank you, President and Co-Chair.
Of the meeting. And with this comment, and thanks a lot for this, I take it that the decision is approved.
So now let us move on to any other business. And there are a few items under this any other business. Maybe US want to start? There are issues you already raised.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. There was something I'd flagged at the beginning of the meeting a couple days ago that I just wanted to raise here briefly. No need to have a long discussion unless others wish to do so. But there was a document circulated to all of us on the program cycle guidelines. I think that was in accordance with a prior decision, which was to show us the guidelines that would implement the policy document that had been provided at a prior meeting. I think it's certainly a welcome document. It's helpful to have all the policies and the guidelines together in one place. It's a helpful compilation document, which I think is what was intended by the prior request made in a council decision. But looking forward to GEF 7, and in the spirit of wanting to both consolidate but also update as necessary full range of policies and procedures of the GEF. We would suggest that there be further work on this now, taking account of everything that's there, but looking at it with fresh eyes, identifying potential gaps in the existing policies and procedures, or the program cycle guidelines, I should say, and then plugging those gaps as appropriate. I'll just provide one example for now, but I think there are others. The guidelines as they exist don't provide any clarity on integrated approach programs and how they're developed and implemented. They're modeled on other programs, but I think they were designed to be different and presumably to be implemented differently. So that's just one example. So that's pretty much all we wanted to say at this time about that document. We wanted to call it to everyone's attention. We propose that there simply be a decision adopted here, if people agree, to request that this updated document be delivered at the next council meeting, or at some appropriate time thereafter, if that would be too ambitious, because I realize we're seeking a lot of updates all at once while you're also working on the other replenishment documents. But this is just something that we, I think, should try to see in advance for in alignment with the launch of the new replenishment period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the distinction made in the comments as well. You referred back to the Council decision to ask a working group which involved a large number of agencies to work on essentially what was an effort to codify existing guidelines. So it was part of the assignment actually not to create new rules where there wasn't any existing references, but rather to make sure there was a one-stop shop clarified and that would facilitate access to guidelines for everyone. So in that context, the agencies have worked with us over a period of about 18 months to produce something that at this point has not generated further comments from them on the latest circulation. We see great value to the possibility of implementing it immediately so that we benefit from that clarification. And we certainly see it as a living document, so we welcome the opportunity to work further on some of the gaps that could be identified or some of the changes that indeed will be required in the future. And if that would be acceptable as a proposal, we would move with what we have and we would inform the gaps. On the particular point of IAPs, let me mention that it was in fact decided and has been operated this way, that IAPs are treated as programs and are processed in exactly the same way. So we have clarity as to processing for the time being and have not encountered issues with that at the operational level. But there could be other areas where we could push further the reflection on what clarifies the work of operation for everyone in the partnership, which is the purpose of the guidelines. It had been discussed as well in the context of this task force that there may be the need for an even more detailed set of sort of manual of procedures, which could be something helpful, particularly to the operational focal points in their understanding and in their capacity need as well to interface with agencies and with the GEF. And there has been seeds of work in that direction. So we're very open-minded to making sure that with what we now have, which is a codified set of policy as a one-stop shop, as per request of the Council, a codified set of guidelines as per the recent production, we would have a complete and clarified set of an accessible set available on the website in one place so that everybody working across the partnership could get from us precise information on how to approach processing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I would like to call on Marita from Denmark, followed by May, France.
Thank you. And from our side, also highly appreciate the implementation of the decision and the policy that was adopted a year ago. We also very much welcome the work that has taken place in the committee. And we see perhaps also in our own case, in our own agency, guidelines such as this as something that needs to be continued updated and continued developed as institutions develop, as we learn more, etc. So it will be difficult to set a full stop at any point in time because there will be a continued process of updating. We find that it is, just like you mentioned, a very important thing to see it as one set, or you called it also a one-stop shop. Right now, it looks like a set of individual guidelines on individual topics, and the whole process around it is not entirely clear. The cycle, so to speak, is not entirely clear. That's part of that is in the policy, but I think still we perhaps fail to see what is the set as such, what is the whole document, and will it be a whole document? We also would like to hear more about how do you expect to communicate this. And we ask this question in particular because, as we've learned also in some of the evaluations, that there are, for outsiders, some difficulty in understanding how to engage with GEF. The private sector has mentioned this. It can also be a challenge for individual groups, civil society, researchers, etc. So it would be quite important to discuss also how do you anticipate this set or whole manual or whatever it is that you want to develop, how will you communicate that? How will you make it user-friendly, etc.? And then finally, we understand that the committee has really gathered those who are already involved in implementing a lot of this, but how well has it been consulted with outsiders? As I mentioned before, there are institutions, groups that feel that GEF is not accessible. Could we test it and could we consult a bit more broadly on some of those tools so that we are clear whether they are indeed something that will create transparency for them and will make it easier to engage with GEF? Thank you.
Thank you. May, followed by Jos.
Thank you, Naoko. I will go fast, and I do agree with the previous comment on a review of the document. Thank you very much for taking into account our request a year ago. But it seems that we still have room to clarify and to have a better list, more exhaustive, of all the policies and all the guidelines that are applied to the project, to the cycle. So they were modified. I know, I do agree that this document should be updated regularly, and also to integrate in it the integrated approaches for pilots, and we should have this document for formal approval by the Council when we next meet. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Jos, last speaker of this.
Yes, thank you very much. It's an obvious point. I'm sure you've thought of it, but I think it would be useful to just put this on some kind of regular update footing. As accreditation and all these other processes should be periodically and predictably updated so that we always know that we're never more than 18 or 24 months out of date. So if you give that some thought and let us know next time around, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We certainly take very good note of the request to have this document as a living document, and we very much seen a need and had approached the exercise along those lines. The choice of topic was driven by essentially participation. We sat early on with the agencies, which gave us some views on which area were more in need of clarification, or which were the areas where layers of previous guidelines needed clarification, management of overlaps, or showed some gaps in language or ambiguity in language. So we proceeded with that list of topics. More can be done, and we certainly welcome the opportunity to further the work and to take it to revised approval. I think the proposal made also along the line of a regular update is very common sense, given that the cycle of the GEF every 4 years changes substantially some of the approaches, and that in the meantime there are needs of the various users that can surface as well. So we welcome the possibility to do that, and we'll come back with a more with a complemented document at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois. There is one more item which I think the US raised. Pete?
Yes, Matt. Thanks again for indulging me. I'll try to be brief. There are a couple other topics that we've touched on over the course of the last couple of days. One was in the context of discussing the Transparency International report that covered a range of issues. There was an issue raised there about just taking another look at the fiduciary standards and seeing if those are fully up to date. And we would fully support doing so. And similarly, in the context of the IEO evaluation, we'd discussed, or there was a recommendation to take a look as well at the social and environmental safeguards. And so we would suggest that there be just two decisions. I guess they would need to be separate decisions that basically call for not new policies by November, because that would be too heavy a lift, I think, in the context of everything else going on and the other updates that we've called for, but I think a plan to review. So basically some sort of scoping exercise that identifies the topics and a timeline for moving forward, so that again, as we move into the next replenishment period, we have some safeguards, and both, again, the fiduciary side and also environmental and social, that we know have been reviewed and, where appropriate, updated. Thank you.
Pete, do you want to propose a text, or?
I can read something out if that's helpful. So basically, first paragraph could say, and we can obviously get this around so people can just read it. Council, having reviewed the document GEF/ME/C.52/info, review of the GEF policy on agency minimum standards on environmental and social safeguards, requests the Secretariat to prepare a paper on a plan to review the GEF's social and environmental safeguards to be presented to the Council at the November 2017 Council meeting. Second paragraph would read, Council also requests the Secretariat to present a rationale and a plan to review the GEF's fiduciary standards to be presented to Council at the November 2017 Council meeting. Thank you.
Yes.
18. Pete, it's going to be 2018. Second one, right?
This is the rationale.
Let's Yeah, we understand. Yeah. So if it sounds okay to you, we just distribute for you to also take a look. So why don't we distribute it? Okay, right.
Yes, as long as you review the proposed decisions, I'd like to slip in with one issue, which is the Ethics Committee. I had a few very inspiring conversations with colleagues around the table, and I'm able to propose to you the membership of the Ethics Committee. we decided upon yesterday, in principle, for your approval. So the proposal from my side is that Peter Wisner from the United States, council member, would chair the ethics committee and would take a term of 3 years. Laura Camila Bermudez Vilches from Colombia, council member of the constituency of Brazil, Colombia and Ecuador, would be a member of the ethics committee with an initial period of 2 years. Joss Wheatley from UK, a council member, would be a member of the committee as well, with an initial duration of 2 years. Ragnar Amson from Mauritius, alternate member of the constituency of Comoros, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Madagascar, Mauritius, Rwanda, Seychelles, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania and Uganda. She would be a member of the committee for an initial period of 3 years as well. And Ayelen Maria Gersi from Argentina, alternate member of the constituency of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, will be a member of the committee with an initial period also of 2 years. I would like to ask if there are any objections to this or any further comments. So I take it as approved by you that we will have this membership of the committee. We will include it in the co-chair summary, the membership, and I'm sure actually that you will have a lot of fun in your work, but also you will do a very good job and very responsible work on the ethics and conflict of interest policy. And there's some things, some work to do until the next council in November to present it then to the council for further review and decision. Thanks a lot for your cooperation.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. So now we immediately move on to the LDCF, SCCF Council meeting. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, very good morning to this LDCF SCCS Council. Since the last time we met for this particular council, there has been quite a significant achievements or milestones for this GEF's adaptation program. I just may want to pick up a few items. Number one, we have received the council approval for 20 LDCF projects in the total amount of 146 million, which brought the total cumulative number of the approval to 1.16 billion in support to LDCs. And the second good news, the South Sudan had submitted its NAPA to the UNFCCC, making it eligible to access project financing from LDCF. As you know, we have circulated to you the first NAPA implementation project for South Sudan, a 9 million intervention to address the capacity of the government and communities in South Sudan to adapt to climate change. Another good news, under SCCF, we approved one project that directly complements GEF's Mediterranean Sea Program. It's a 42 million GEF Trust Fund investment, which in turn mobilized over 700 million in co-financing. This will help to ensure that climate change considerations are reflected in overall portfolio. We will hear actually a lot from Yuha later, because they have completed an evaluation of the SCCF, and which has resulted in a number of positive notes speaking to the strengths of the GEF adaptation program as a whole. Lastly, but not least, since the last council meeting, we have received several new pledges from Belgium, Iceland, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, as well as Walloon region of Belgium to the LDCF and SCCF. That said, everybody in this room knows that there is much more urgent needs and immediate needs to this important fund. We have a wonderful commitment at Paris 2 years ago in 2015, but to keep the momentum is absolutely important. As you have just seen, countries are showing a strong and sustained interest in adaptation financing provided by GEF's fund, both from LDCF and SCCF. We want to continue to be responsive to their requests and to their urgent and immediate needs. And this effort continues to be critically linked to the broader 2030 agenda, because then those efforts will be very easily undermined by the effects or severe impacts by climate change. The GEF, we hope, has been always an early mover in climate change adaptation space. I was quite pleased and amused to hear either yesterday or the day before somebody actually from this table mentioned that there is much better learning on the LDCF and SCCF from their projects. And it's something very good to hear, but we want to continue to strengthen and that kind of ability to learn and from our own portfolio. Going forward, I think this kind of knowledge and expertise to be useful not only to LDCF, SCCF, but beyond those two funds and to the broader adaptation community, including a Green Climate Fund. So with this, we look forward to our further efforts in this very important area together. Thank you so much. So now I would like to invite Mr. Mr. Jibril Jember from Ethiopia. He is a leader of the LDC group, and so we have an opportunity to hear directly from that LDCF and chair. So Mr. Jember, please. Thank you so much for coming all over the
Thank you, Madam Chair, Council members, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and guests. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to address the 22nd LCF and CF Council on behalf of the group of 48 least developed countries under the UNFCCC. As you know, parties over the last 2 weeks convened in Bonn to discuss key issues toward the effective implementation of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. In Bonn, our group and the subsidiary body for implementation noted with appreciation the new pledge to the LDCF of $17.1 million made since COP22. Members of the LDC group would like to express their great appreciation for this contribution from Belgium, the Wallon region of Belgium, Iceland, and Japan, which will allow implementation of adaptation activities to address the most urgent and immediate adaptation needs of least developed countries presented in their NAPAs. I would like to thank all the other national and sub-national governments that have expressed interests to contribute to the LDCF. I would like also to invite the others to contribute more to the LDCF. Colleagues, climate change places a huge strain on our economies. Death, displacement, loss of livelihood, disease, and the interruption of economic development due to climate impacts have become more frequent. Latest research findings show that people in our countries are 5 times more likely to die from climate-related disasters than other citizens of the globe. So I am certain you can understand why our group places a great importance on the LDCF. This fund is devoted to help the nearly 1 billion people in the 48 poorest countries on the earth. Excellencies, our countries have followed the Paris Agreement decision, and all 48 countries have formulated and submitted their NDCs. Through these plans, LDCs are preparing more ambitious actions, both around adaptation and mitigation, and are more than just shouldering our differentiated responsibility. However, studies show that poorest countries only get 40% of adaptation finance, even though almost all contributors to the fund state that this funding flow is designed to help the poorest countries adapt. Our countries see only 5% of the finance for renewables. We are grateful that the GEF Council approved over $150 million worth of activities in the 2016 fiscal year, and that to date the fund has received over $1.22 billion to support our countries. However, the LCF currently faces significant challenges in providing adequate financing to support the full implementation of NAPAs, activities in preparation of NAPS process, and the full implementation of LDC work program. Recent estimates suggest that $4 billion are needed merely for NAPA implementation. We are also expecting funding from the LDCF for our NAP formulation and preparation. The progress report presented to this council meeting states that resources amounting to $156 million were needed to fund the LDC's priority adaptation projects that had been technically cleared by the Secretariat. Another $84.7 million were needed for project proposals that had been endorsed by countries' operational focal points and which are currently at concept stage. This lack of funding in the LCF is seriously alarming. We need to ensure that we do not lose the momentum created in Paris. Madam Chair, Council members, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and guests, our group has full trust in the one fund that is dedicated to addressing our needs and priorities, the LDC Fund. We believe that the fund can play an important role and fill a clear gap in the international climate finance architecture by focusing on the most innovative adaptation projects, piloting and demonstrating emerging adaptation technologies, techniques and practices, and in doing so, laying the foundation for upscaling of proven approach through larger financial mechanisms such as the Green Climate Fund. I must also mention that the delays in funding approved for LDCs from larger funds such as the GCF emphasizes the importance of funds such as the LDCF in building our capacity to approach such institutions and systems. Also, the needs of the LDCs are often related to natural resource base, upon which the livelihoods of the poorest and most vulnerable people are dependent. The LDCF has a strong track record in supporting natural resource management, sustainable agriculture, and water resource management, hand in hand with disaster risk prevention. There are, of course, needs such as the climate proofing of roads and buildings, seawalls, which the LCF may not always be able to support, but the LCF has a clear role to play in supporting measures such as ecosystem-based adaptation, natural resource management, climate security, and disaster risk prevention. Finally, I would like to thank again all the governments and subnational governments for their interests in contributing to the LDCF, the Council members, and the GEF for your support. Thank you also for the opportunity, and I wish all a successful and productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jebel, that it is such an opportunity for us to hear directly from you that how this fund is kind of making a good progress on the ground, but also the urgent and the immediate needs continue to be there. So we will do our best to respond to your serious requests. Also, I just also want to say that we were very happy that your government will host our next GEF 7 donor meeting. It's on the first week of October, so we will see you sometime very soon and then after summer. So again, thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming. Yes, yeah. So we are now moving on to the adoption of the agenda. We have about maybe less than 1 hour to try to put everything by noon. And so we actually did regroup several of the documents and discussion together. So that the plan is that the first, the GEF Secretariat presents to you progress report of LDCF and SCCF, then FI16 annual monitoring review of LDCF and SCCF. Then we will have a discussion together. Then that followed by actually the evaluation office that there are 2 evaluation reports, so that we will have again the combined discussion with evaluation office. Then after that, both the Secretariat and the evaluation office will present their program and actually the budget for your approval. So that's the plan. So may I call on? I hope that's okay to you. Let's adopt the agenda as proposed. Okay, thank you. So may I invite Gustavo to present the papers.
Thank you, Naoko, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to present to you the progress report of the LDCF and SCCF on behalf of the Secretariat. We'd just like to alert you that we have issued a revision to the document and the progress report due to a recent pledge by Iceland, so we updated that. So it was a good reason to do so. The report describes the operations of the LDCF and SCCF from September of 2016 to April of 2017. During the reporting period, Belgium, Iceland, Japan, Sweden, and the Walloon region of Belgium pledged resources to LDCF, and cumulative pledges to the LDCF increased in relation to these pledges by $33 million, or about 3% since August 31st of 2016, and now reach $1.22 billion as of March 31st of 2017. Of this, 1.16 billion or 96% have been paid, meaning that $50.5 million of pledges to the LDCF remain outstanding as of this date. As of April 10, 2017, 51 LDCs have accessed $12.2 million in support of the preparation of the ANAPAs, bringing the total number of countries that have completed and submitted the ANAPAs to 51. Of the 51 countries that have completed ANAPAs, 49 have accessed a total of $1.14 million for 195 projects to address the urgent and immediate adaptation needs, in addition to 3 global projects with LDCF resources amounting to some $1.4 $14 million that have been approved to support the preparation of the NAP process and the implementation of elements of the LDC work program other than NAPAs. The funding approvals represent an increase of $118.9 million or 11% during the reporting period. But in the near term, the demand for LDCF resources continued to exceed the funds available for new proposals. As of March 31st of this year, the funds available for new funding decisions amounted to $62.2 million, whereas resources amounting to $156.1 million were sought for 24 full-size projects and 1 medium-sized project that have been technically cleared by the Secretariat, and another $84.7 million was sought for 11 project proposals that have been endorsed by country operational focal points and that have been formally submitted. The progress reports provides a summary of the expected portfolio level results. 135 out of 160 projects endorsed or approved by the GEF CEO provided an estimate of the number of direct beneficiaries, as you can see in this table. These projects with LDCF resources amounting to $764 million seek to directly reduce the vulnerability of some 20 million people. Importantly, given the mandate of the LDCF to support the preparation of the NAP process in LDCs, 76 LDCF projects are already supporting 42 countries in their efforts to integrate climate change and adaptation into 195 national development policies, plans, and frameworks. The LDCF also assists countries in laying the groundwork for climate-resilient development through 75 projects that will enable 41 countries to strengthen their national hydromet and climate information services. As for the SCCF, 50 out of 74 SCCF projects endorsed or approved provided an estimate of the number of beneficiaries. These projects amount to $231 million, and they aim to directly reduce the vulnerability of some 5.5 million people. And in addition, 32 SCCF projects are already supporting 47 countries in their efforts to integrate climate change adaptation into 128 national development policies, plans, and frameworks. During the reporting period, 12 LDCF projects and 2 SCCF projects were endorsed and approved by the GEF CEO. And I would just provide you with a few examples of climate resilient benefits from some of these projects that aim to provide. They include, for example, in Sierra Leone, improved health and decreased child mortality in the context of climate change through 100 groundwater monitoring stations, 84 new boreholes, 466 new wells, and equipping 71 standpipes with solar power. In Ethiopia, sustainable and climate-smart economic growth benefiting 55,000 vulnerable people through the provision of improved climate information services to 40,000 people, reforesting 8,000 hectares with indigenous multi-use resilient plant species, and installing 400 kilometers of terraces in vulnerable highlands. In Lebanon, resilient forest landscapes in 3 ecological corridors will be addressed through restoration and reforestation of 2,000 hectares of forest ecosystems, and also through the diversification of the livelihoods of 24 vulnerable communities. Finally, 3 countries increased urban resilience in El Salvador, Mexico, and Jamaica, include the construction of 2.8 kilometers of irrigation ditches and 2.5 kilometers of permeable pavements and walkways, and the development of 1,000 hectares of sustainable agriculture using climate-resilient species, in addition to planting more than 27,000 trees. With this, I thank you for your attention, and I will go, as the chair indicated, straight into the AMR for the sake of expediency here. So this is the document that I'm introducing is the FY16 Annual Monetary Review of the LDCF and the SCCF. And the review describes performance and results of the lessons learned from the portfolio of projects and programs financed under the 2 funds, that have begun implementation before June 30 of 2015 and that were under implementation during at least part of the fiscal year 2016. The document provides also information on the management effectiveness and efficiency. The GEF Secretariat received reports for 79 LDCF projects. In total, LDCF funding commitments towards the active portfolio amounted to $435 million. Of the project grants committed, $137 million, or 35%, have been so far disbursed. 75 of the 79 LDCF projects under implementation, or 95%, were rated moderately, satisfactorily, or higher in terms of their progress towards development objectives and their implementation process. As of June 30, 2016, the 79 projects contained in the active LDCF portfolio have already reached more than 4.4 million direct beneficiaries and have trained some 340,000 people in various aspects of climate change adaptation. Through these projects, an estimated 1.1 million hectares of land have been brought under more resilient management, and moreover, 51 national policies, frameworks, or plans in 15 LDCs have been strengthened or developed to better address climate change risks and adaptation, with 33 projects also enhancing climate information systems in 32 LDCs. Under the SCCF, the GEF Secretariat received reports for 33 projects. Total SCCF funding commitments to these projects amounted to $128 million. And of the project's financing, the project finance commitments, 34 million, or 30%, have been dispersed. 29 of the 31 SCCF projects under implementation, or 94%, received development objective ratings of moderately satisfactory or higher. As for implementation progress, 30 of the 32 projects were rated in the satisfactory range. As of June 30, 2016, the 33 SCCF projects reviewed had reached more than 3.7 million direct beneficiaries and trained 20,000 people. Through these projects, some 1.6 million hectares of land have been brought under resilient management, and 14 national policies, plans, or frameworks in 7 countries have been strengthened to include climate change mitigation. Adaptation. With that, Chair, I turn back to you.
Thank you, Gustavo. Now, I would like to open the floor for your comments, feedback, opinions. Okay, Samuel, followed by Abdu. Yeah. Samuel, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this presentation and the 2 documents. Germany very much welcomes the very detailed and transparent presentation of the achieved results and of the new developments in the project portfolio of the LDCF and the SCCF. We also welcome the gender-sensitive approaches in the current portfolio, as well as the fact that a majority of the projects presented have cooperations ongoing with the private sector, aiming at awareness raising and capacity building for sustainable investment practices. So we support a continuation of these approaches for future projects, work programs, etc. And as an example, I'd like to cite the cooperation with mobile network operators on insurance and early warning systems, which fits into the overall discussion also at the GEF on climate risk management. And so in our opinion, the Secretariat should develop and further continue on such innovative approaches. This is particularly the case as there's a very large pipeline of projects still in place, And with view to justifying the use of LDSVF funds and in the overall political discussion, also with other partners and at home, we would argue for a more strategic approach in the use of the funds and of both of the pipeline and the new projects that are coming in. And that's why we would like to ask the Secretariat to present, possibly at next Council, options for a way forward and a more strategic use of the resources of the LDCF, how to deal with the actual pipeline and how to deal with projects that are presented. Innovative approaches and cooperation with the private sector should definitely be part of this strategy or should be taken into account, as well as the cooperation with MDBs, who should be a part of it. Also for LDCs, multilateral development banks can be an important partner in leveraging funds for the global environment and adaptation to climate change. So in sum, the LDCF and SDCF should be using new mechanisms, innovative approaches for, especially in the case of LDCF, for adaptation finance that benefits the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Abdul, followed by Marita.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for their wonderful work, because we all know the LDCF funding and the SCCF funding has created greater impact in the lives of our people and our communities. And I also want to continue to encourage them, because whatever you may say, we do understand that developed nations have economic shocks, but I want us also to agree that economic shocks and environmental hazards quite vary a little bit in terms of their disastrous effect. And I want to continue to encourage the nations to see the need to continue to support us, because for LDCF countries and for SCCF countries, we are very much vulnerable to the incidences of climate change. We lack the capacity to cope. We lack the resources to manage and adapt to situation. And we also rely on you to continue to support us as baby nations, because we do believe that if we are to succeed as a world, as a globe, we require to support each other towards our development strikes. And if we are to succeed in terms of environmental sustainability, we also rely on developed nations to help us. So I also want to take this opportunity to encourage council members from the developed nations to see how best they can continue to put into this portfolio, because we do have several projects. You already seen the results, you already seen the impact that this kind of fund is making in various communities, and there is no joke about it. These funds have helped us a lot in terms of moving us towards climate resilience and also helping us to cope with several environmental hazards. So I just want to continue to encourage the Secretariat to be effective and to continue to support us in this direction and to continue to mobilize resources. Please don't give up. I know sometimes it's challenging working with the donor community trying to mobilize resources, but let them continue to support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdul. Marita, followed by Jos.
Thank you, Chair. We thank you for this comprehensive progress report and the progress made, and we recognize the very important work that you're doing to assist developing countries in their work to develop and implement national adaptation plans. We also note that there is a quite large pipeline ready to go that is underfunded. We regret this, and we hope that more donors would contribute funding to LDCF. From our side, we are prepared to contribute an additional 50 million Swedish crowns this year, and because we recognize the importance of the work done by the fund. I also agree on the comments made by Germany on the gender sensitivity. That's very positive. But I would like to see that the progress report also integrates the positive results on gender integration in future reports. Taking this opportunity on the gender as well, so I don't have to raise it under the evaluation report, We noticed that there is an inconsistency between the gender integration results in the annual monitoring report and in the annual evaluation report coming later, where they actually highlight that that the 5 projects that they have looked at have weak gender integration, and one is actually gender blind. And we have a question: how could a project be gender blind? Because of there is a minimum requirement for gender analysis. So it would be good to have an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Jos, followed by Judith.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues, and thanks for the comprehensive report. As usual, it's very interesting and a good overview of how those funds are doing. And how are they doing? Well, they're still sick in the same bed, as we say. There's much more demand than money. From Belgium side, you know, we're doing our best, not only the federal government, but also the regions to contribute. We can only hope that more donors step up, and it's good to hear that Sweden is going to contribute. I'm not allowed to say it. We probably will contribute also this year, but it's too early to say it officially. Thanks also the information in order to have the arguments back home. The information of the pipeline that we have is interesting. Maybe it would be good to have to include the start dates of the projects in the different tables to have a better view on the status of implementation. I got an indication that the amount of completed projects in Annex 1 is not consistent with what's on your website. I haven't checked it myself, but it comes from Brussels. On the other document, a very important report we find, especially the lessons learned section, and also there maybe when you mention the ratings of development objectives and implementation progress. I think you used to have the targets mentioned, but they're not there now, and it's useful to have them just to see. Now on lessons learned, as I said, we find it very important, and we note that the lessons learned do not relate much to innovation. It's more about good practice of project management, and of course that is important information. But I think, and related to what Germany said about innovation, it would be good to explore a bit more and have lessons learned on the challenges related to the climate-specific aspects, innovations and risks as much as possible, so that we can learn what helps us to do adaptation better, and so improve over time. Of course, we're still in the early stages, but an impact is probably difficult to measure all the time, but we consider this important. The report is also an interesting section on the private sector, and we believe it would be useful in future reports to be a bit more specific on the nature of the partnerships with the private sector, the level of engagement of the partners. And what aspects like procurement, providing training, and so on. There are some examples of this. In some examples it's clearer than in others. So if we could standardize with if you have the information all the time, of course. Also, in the longer term, it would be interesting to follow up how the engagement of these private sector stakeholders have encouraged them to work on their own climate strategies, and how that is, what difference that the GEF has made in their business, for their businesses. On project performance, project cycle performance, of course, we regret that that more than half is not within the lines, and we can only call upon not only the Secretary but also the agencies, of course, to see what each one on its side can do to try to get to that within the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos. May I call on Judith, followed by Marita?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this report. Overall, very pleased with the coverage of the LDCF and the SCCF. I think these are very important. I find it's very important to be supporting adaptation action in vulnerable countries. I guess one of the things that we noticed here, if we're understanding correctly, there's still about 38 million in funds that are left to be dispersed. And having conversations with colleagues who were at the UNFCCC negotiations in Bonn earlier this month, there was a lot of concern about approval of projects and availability of funds for projects. So we were wondering why we don't have any projects, a work program to be approving at this session. And so if you could clarify that, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I call on Marita, followed by Antoinette?
Thank you. And thank you for a very comprehensive report. And as others, we also place much emphasis and give high priority to the LDCF. We find that it is indeed one of the best ways to support LDCs in adaptation efforts, which is why we are also contributing. We are not doing it on an annual basis, so we will never be mentioned, but nevertheless, we are contributing. And also congratulations to South Sudan, who was the last one to have done a NAPA, so that now we can get on with the very important work of also supporting NAP processes in all of the 51 LDCs. The report that you're providing, especially the monitoring review, is an excellent way of giving us an insight in what is going on within the fund. We are here seeing actual results in real time, contrary to what we see in GEF. So I think that's compliments to the Secretariat for doing that effort. We know it's difficult to do it. There's a lot of material to go through, but it's extremely useful on our side to also be able to communicate some of the results that we are contributing to. And one could also ask then what we have in GEF, which is the scorecard on the other hand. Could that scorecard also be used for LDCF? Could we have similar data giving us a broad overview as we do have for GEF in terms of the scorecard? Two issues stand out for us in the reports that we have seen. One is on the private sector, mentioned by many others. I will align myself to what have been said on their side. We think that it is very interesting to see that when everybody says it's so difficult to work on with private sector, engage private sector in LDCs and on adaptation, you actually manage to do it. And I think that's something you also need to perhaps communicate even better, and also perhaps understand a little better what are really the lessons learned from that. So I will concur also with colleagues who are encouraging for us to do a bit more assessment of what exactly is this engagement, how does it come about, what is the nature, because obviously some of it is quite different from what we see in perhaps large-scale energy projects in relation to mitigation, and in middle-income countries. But nevertheless, it's there, and I think it's important to really harvest the the lessons learned that we are gaining and communicate that more broadly. The other aspect that we are taking home from this is the issue of sustainability. This is something that was also highlighted in the independent evaluation that was produced last year. It didn't turn into a recommendation, but they were nevertheless pointing at the issue of sustainability. And sustainability is, of course, a crucial feature because we are working in LDCs who have limited budgets for operation maintenance of infrastructure or even for engaging in terms of time and resources in maintaining institutional frameworks, governance setups, etc. So having a very clear attention to sustainability from the onset is of crucial importance. And we find that when you look at also in the evaluation report from the independent evaluation that we will look at in a minute, I'm sure, that for those very small sample, nevertheless, when it's said that there is not, as it is now, possible to continue the results and the changes of the project without further finance from outside, I think that's not good enough. We need to be able to somehow have those issues resolved during the program period so that we are not ending up producing results that cannot be sustained. So this is something we would like you to perhaps, when you pick your issues to do lessons learned on, maybe next time you could look at the sustainability aspect. What can we do more in that respect? But overall, very happy to see the good material you're producing and the progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Merit. May I call on Antoinette, followed by Mr. Natsubori?
Thank you, and thank you to Gustavo for this rich in information report. I'd like to encourage the GEF Secretariat regarding resource mobilization. And we also thank the donors who keep on giving. With the same fund, we have started restoring landscapes. These are integrated projects and new ones. It's innovation. And we work in order to rehabilitate lands in order to contribute to agricultural productivity and fight food insecurity and, in general, fight against poverty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. May I go on, Mr. Natsubori, and followed by Rashid.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive report on LDCF and SCCF, and we welcome the steady progress and the good evaluation of projects. As the Secretary mentioned, Japan made 100 million in contribution, equivalent to $830,000 US to LDCF on March 21st this year. The Paris Agreement, which entered into force last November, stipulates the importance of support on adaptation and of taking into consideration the needs of developing countries, especially LDCs. And G7 Ise Leaders Declaration, released last year, also affirms ensuring shift and successful implementation of the Paris Agreement and mobilizing climate finance to assist developing countries with respect to adaptation. In this regard, we continue to support actively developing countries' climate change measures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rashid, followed by UK Jos.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for its work and thank the GEF regarding adaptation activities. From our point of view, it could become one of the comparative advantages of the GF to strengthen adaptation and resilience. I won't talk about the importance of adaptation for the developing countries, particularly for the LDCs. It's a matter of survival at a time when vulnerability is becoming worse in those countries due to climate change. That's why I invite the donor countries to fulfill their commitments under the Paris Agreement. Those funds have to benefit from those commitments within the framework of the financial mechanism of the Climate Convention. Regarding the private sector, it is very important, and of course we have to explore all possibilities. We have to innovate, but it should not be a condition to have access to the funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. May I call on Jos, followed by Laman from Myanmar.
Thank you very much for this report, and thank you also to the Secretariat for helping us with the log frame on this matter for our own domestic purposes. I just wanted to ask one question which I think is useful periodically to get back to, and that is what we do about the projects that are underperforming. Plainly, we have a very high level of satisfactory or above for LDCF, but those under implementation, we have 4 that are underperforming. What are the remedial steps, and how do you keep us abreast of that the remediation is successful? Thank you.
Thank you. And last speaker, Mr. Laman, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, GEF Secretary, for comprehensive the progress report on LDCF. And I would like to thank to donor countries who contribute to LDCF. We LDC countries, they realize right now increasing, very frequent happens climate change risk. But because of the limited the capacity, because of limited financial, but within capacity, LDCs are trying to tackle, overcome what we are now facing. A lot of immediate the climate change risk. So with this, the LDCF is really very essential to support, to address the climate change immediate needs. And so we have, as a LDC share expressed, we have NAPA. So we identify a series of the immediate needs and priority in different areas, and particularly natural resource-based agriculture for security. So fully implement the NAPA is really very essential. So LDCF support to be increased, to be more and more sustainable support is really very important. So I would like to encourage to the donor countries to consider to contribute more resource for mobilizing the LDC countries what we are facing, the climate change risk. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lamon. Now I want to call on the Gustavo and the team to respond. Sorry, very important intervention. CSO network. You keep it.
Thank you very much, Naoko. First of all, I'd like to send just a congratulatory message to the distinguished delegates from the continent of Africa on the occasion of Africa Freedom Day, which falls on today. Thank you. Now, considering that the main objective of the LODCF and SCCF is to mobilize and program adequate resources to finance adaptation activities in line with, number one, the guidance by the UNFCCC and Conference of Parties, developing country adaptation needs and results of evaluations of funds for adaptation, and evolving and diversifying landscape of funds for adaptation. And lastly, efforts to raise the level and scale of interventions funded under the LODCF and SCCF. The GEF network recognizes that this approach has over time been building on the achievements of the Global Environmental Facility adaptation portfolio, and including a pilot program in the GEF Trust Fund and subsequent experiences in managing these funds. As a network, we recall that the Least Developed Countries Fund and Small Climate Change Funds was established to support and support the country's work programs. That is to assist the LODCs carry out, among others, the preparation and implementation of national adaptation programs of action, NAPAs. And this work program has now grown in size with the inclusion of updating and implementation of NAPAs and preparation of national action plans processes. We therefore welcome with gratitude the pledges from Belgium, Iceland, Japan, Sweden, and the Walloon region of Belgium. However, the GEF network notes with concern that the current levels of pledges to LODCF do not sometimes correspond with funding needs, and thus postponing hope of reducing environmental vulnerabilities, building adaptive capacity, and strengthening resilience in the developing countries. As you may be aware, 93.9 million, or about 60% of funding support for 24 full-size projects technically cleared by the Secretariat is uncertain. The GEF network urges additional and timely contributions to the LODCF so as to effectively realize the global goal on adaptation. This council should support LODCs meet their submission deadline on progress made towards the achievement of the objectives of the process to formulate and implement NAPs referred to in Decision 4/CP21 before 4th October 2017. This support can only be predicted based on new pledges to be announced and contributed to the LODCF. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now, Gustavo.
Thank you, Naoko. I'll try to answer the questions, and thanks for the great comments. And I'm not going to mention the great comments, and we're just taking them and use them for the new reports that we will produce later on. But just to comment a bit on the question on gender, we were really pleased to see that the evaluation of the IO finds that close to 88% of all SCCF projects and LDCF projects have gender responsive results framework. There are a few that underperform, and that's, I think, going to be touched upon by the IO in their report. On the question, there was one project that I think called the interest of I guess, Sweden, that was labeled as gender blind. This project actually was endorsed in 2009 when there were no gender policies and no gender analysis required. So it's really a factor of that, and we can see that with right policies and right practices, we can very quickly turn that around. On the question of lessons learned, we take the lessons learned recommendation in a very welcoming way. We're going to report best on the private sector engagement as we have information available. I will also like to remind all of us that we also produced, I think it was last year, we released a very thorough report on lessons learned on the portfolio of SCCF and LDCF. And those lessons learned, I think, should continue to be useful in the current as well. And it was the first effort that we had on a comprehensive way to capture those lessons. On the question of the pipeline and how to handle the pipeline, we will certainly bring back to you on the next council meeting some options. Just like to remind everyone that the practice has been to the state that we apply an equity approach to this, in which countries have a particular order in which they are addressed as money comes in. If we're going to be adopting a different approach, that of course will have certain ramifications for the practice that we currently employ, and so there are trade-offs and there are advantages in either way, but we'll bring to you some views on that from our perspective, and for your consideration. Canada mentioned the question of finances available and programming. Actually, we don't produce work programs. The LDCF, SCCF operates on a rolling basis because the idea is to address urgent needs of countries, and as money comes in, we clear projects and put it before you on a rolling basis. So there is sometimes a lag between the time that we approve and the CEO approves, endorses the project, and then it's circulated to all of you, and then by that time the trustee then disperses the money. And sometimes that's the gap that you see financially, but we program everything that we have, and we have a long pipeline, and we'd like to produce this in a very, very quick way, so we are addressing that. Question of sustainability. Sustainability will continue to be tracked. And actually, this is also COP guidance to us, and we made it a practice, and we increasingly have asked project proponents to have a separate output on the development of a sustainability strategy. So we are checking that, and agencies are very careful now to make considerations and develop outputs on that. I think finally the question of underperforming projects, to the extent that we have that information, projects have midterm evaluations, we can work with agencies and see how that underperformance is being addressed. But it's really a question of more to the agencies than the Secretariat. We can only monitor what's being reported, but it's predicated on the agencies to introduce the right corrective measures and making sure that those projects get back on track. I think I've covered most everything. Yes, Joss.
Yeah, I forgot to ask something.
Oh, okay. I thought I forgot to respond.
No, that's okay this time. Yeah, we're talking with colleagues about this rolling approval of LDCF projects. We were wondering, I mean, we don't know how long they've been sitting in the pipeline, and do you have a way, do you review them automatically so that they're still up to date and they're not getting outdated while sitting there for a year or maybe longer, and things can be overtaken by events? So if you could explain how you proceed on the pipeline.
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. We do recognize that some projects may sit in the pipeline for long periods of time and become obsolete. So what we have introduced as practice some time ago is to every project that has been sitting in the pipeline for over a year, we re-engage with the agencies and ask for an update. So they reach out to the countries and introduce the update measures as needed. We had actually a few projects that were recently approved that underwent that updating. So it's a real issue, and we are taking good care so that we don't receive projects and fund projects that have outlived their design. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. With those comments and response, may I propose that the decisions, actually on 2 papers, be approved? Thank you so much. So thank you for the team. Let me invite Yuha from Independent Evaluation Office.
Okay, so we are moving to the agenda items 5 and 6 on evaluation work in respect to the LDCF and SCCF. Thanks to Juha and the evaluation team here again for the work. We will have a quick presentation, And we will have then also the management response by the Secretariat. And then can have a discussion on this in order also to approve the two decisions on your on the table. We are a little bit late in time, so I would actually ask everybody to be again focused. But I think you know how this goes. Thanks, Juha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and good morning, everyone. We will try to be very quick, and in the interest of time, we have combined the two documents that we have into one presentation. One is the fourth LDCF SCCF annual evaluation report, and the other one is the program evaluation of the Special Climate Change Fund. Let me just mention the fact that, interestingly, in the annual evaluation report, all of the projects that we are reporting on are from LDCF, while we have now done the SCCF evaluation, and you may recall that a year ago we presented to you the LDCF program evaluation. I would like to ask my colleague Anna Wig, who is the dedicated evaluation officer for this area, to present this very rapidly.
Thank you, Juha, and good morning. We have combined the presentation of both of these evaluations, and the first one is the annual evaluation report. Which one is it? Are you going to click for me? As Juha mentioned, the annual evaluation report assesses 5 completed projects, all of which this year are LDCF projects. And what we do is we make a cohort of the terminal evaluations that are submitted to the evaluation office in the past calendar year. It's very similar to our annual performance report. This year it includes 4 national projects that focused on climate risks and resilience, and a global national adaptation plan project that focuses on assisting LDCs to advance their NAPs. The national projects are all clearly linked to their respective country NAPAs. And based on outcome ratings, the fund is doing well. All but one had satisfactory outcome ratings. On sustainability, 3 are in the likely range. On M&E, all 5 projects rated in the satisfactory range in both design and implementation of the M&E plans. We also looked at innovative approaches used by the projects, and this depends very much on the context of the project. We looked for approaches that are new in the project area or new to specific issues tackled by the project. All but one had clear innovative elements. In reviewing the design of the project, none had explicit gender considerations for planned activities, and none had an overarching gender mainstreaming strategy or approach. 4 have been rated gender aware and 1 gender blind. But we need to keep in mind that these completed projects were designed before the 2011 gender mainstreaming policy, as Gustavo mentioned. Also, during implementation, we looked at these projects again at completion and rated them again. 1 gender aware was upgraded to gender sensitive, while other gender aware was downgraded to gender blind. So we also have to keep in mind that individual GEF agencies often apply their internal gender policies, strategies, and action plans during implementation, but they do not report on these efforts because it was not a requirement in the past. We also looked at lessons learned. Most lessons in terminal evaluations are related to standard good practices of designing and implementing projects and not related to innovative approaches. I think this was a point that was already brought up earlier. The report highlights about 15 lessons. Then we also have a management action record in the AER, and it's tracking the June 2016 decision on the LDCF program evaluation. Adoption of the decision has been rated medium overall. We're not going to ask for a decision on the AER. The IEO will continue preparing the report annually. And now for the SCCF program evaluation. I'm going to skip this one and the next one. We reached 8 conclusions. SCCF support has been highly relevant. Conclusion 2, the extent which SCCF projects are relevant to other GEF focal areas is limited. Conclusion 3, the SCCF niche is accessibility for non-Annex 1 countries and its support for innovative adaptation projects. The SCCF has the potential to be the ideal incubator for countries to test and refine project concepts prior to seeking large-scale finance through the GCF. Conclusion 4, the SCCF portfolio is highly likely to deliver tangible adaptation benefits and catalytic effects. Conclusion 5, the ultimate catalytic effect of scaling up often demands further investments. Conclusion 6, unpredictable availability of resources for programming has had a negative effect on the efficiency of the fund. And conclusion 7, the gender sensitivity of the SCCF portfolio has strengthened over time. It has improved in project design, project M&E, and project implementation. For example, 84% of GEF 4 SCCF projects had no gender mainstreaming plan, which has dropped to 12.5% in GEF 6 projects. The gender mainstreaming policy and action plan have been important drivers for this change. And conclusion 8, project data in PMIS has a lot of inaccuracies. The evaluation reached 3 recommendations. As recommended by the 2011 SCCF evaluation, the Secretariat should develop mechanisms that ensure the predictable, adequate, and sustainable financing of the SCCF. The GEF Secretariat should communicate the SCCF's niche, including a statement on where it stands in relation to the GCF. The Secretariat should ensure that the data in the PMIS is up to date and accurate. And now I turn over to Juha for the recommended council decision.
Thank you, Anna. How do you want to handle this? Shall we, or we listen to the management response first, I presume?
Yes, please. Maybe first the management response, and then we come to discussion, and finally to the decision, where we maybe have to clarify a few points. Thank you.
Quick enough.
Thank you, Philip. Thanks for the IEO for this great report. We are very happy to see that it's high quality, and we agree with most of the findings, and we appreciate particularly the support that SCCF has been doing and its relevance for UNFCCC guidance, the GEF adaptation strategic objectives, and the country's national environment and sustainable development agendas. With regards to the finding that the SCCF is not really being relevant to other GEF focal areas in terms of global environmental benefits, we'd like to emphasize that there is a diversity of SCCF-supported projects that contribute to focal area objectives, either formally, where SCCF and the GEF trust funding is combined, what we call multi-trust fund projects, or as a co-benefit in areas such as biodiversity. And we have a few project examples of that on mitigation, on international waters, as well on sustainable land and forest management. Perhaps because this was limited to a small sample, this aspect was not highlighted as much as we would like to to see, but we take note of this finding, and we'll work to see that it continues to produce benefits across the entire GEF system. Regarding the recommendation of the evaluation, we agree that financial predictability can improve the effectiveness of SCCF. But we also know that the means to address this falls less within the purview of the Secretariat and the collective environment of donors, and we seek to engage with donors, identify opportunities to better resource the fund. With regards to the second recommendation, the GEF Secretary will continue to define, articulate, and publicly communicate the role of the SCCF externally, and we should do more of that, and we agree with the recommendation. And finally, the overall recommendation to upgrade the GEF PMIS, the Secretariat will continue to endeavor to correct, verify, and update the relevant SCCF project data, and hope that we also get improvements in the system as a whole. With that, Chair, we end our management response, and we appreciate the report by the IEO.
Thanks a lot. I'd like to open the floor for your comments and guidance. And yes, I have Sweden, Marita, followed by Belgium, Jos, and Germany then. Samuel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to come with a number of comments now this late, but we let me just first say that we can support the recommendations of both the reports. I would like to comment especially on the Special Climate Change Fund evaluation. We find this evaluation to be very interesting, and we also welcome the positive results that it presents. But given exactly these positive results and the lack of funding to the SCCF during these past few years, and also in the interest of finding a more leaner and more effective climate architecture, we would like to request the GEF Secretariat, in cooperation with the SCCF, to present a proposal on how relevant parts of the SCCF's activities and operations could be integrated into the work program of the GEF during GEF 7. And furthermore, based on these results, we also noted that the SCCF portfolio has great scaling up potential, and we would therefore like to propose that the SCCF, with support of the GEF Secretariat, presents an action plan on how the fund could best assist developing countries absorb financing via GCF for scaling up of relevant projects. Thank you.
Thanks. Jos?
Thank you. And thanks for the work done and the reports presented. We find it also very useful, both reports, especially the evaluation. We can also agree with the conclusions. We do note that in the evaluation, I mean, if we compare the space dedicated to innovation to that dedicated to gender, there's a big difference. Nothing against gender. I mean, hey, my service is 4 women and me, and my boss was female but retired, so I know all about gender unbalance, as a matter of fact. And I had a question: gender blind, is that a regular concept? I mean, I'm not a specialist, you can tell, but now on the management response, I think you just responded to the conclusions, because I was a bit, yeah, but you did comment on one conclusion with regard to the global environment benefits. I was wondering if that could be also taken up, maybe in the management response. I don't know. That's the idea. Anyway, to conclude on the decision, you will come to the decision text later, but I can already now announce that I would like to add at the end, taking into account also the management response. So the decision, I believe, says that there is somewhere. So where we endorse, where we take note of the conclusions and endorse the recommendations or something, then add to that, taking into account the management response. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Would this apply, in your opinion, as well to the first decision, which looks at the annual evaluation report? Okay, just the management response, just...
Is there a management response to that?
Okay.
It's only to the evaluation, right?
Okay, so that's clarified. Thank you. Germany.
Thank you. We very much welcome the detailed evaluation of the 5 completed LDCF projects, as well as the finding that they are closely aligned with NAPA's and NAP's implementation in the corresponding countries. And we welcome and endorse the recommendations by the IEO on gender issues. With regards to the SCCF, based on the mentioned relations and comparative advantages of SCCF with regards to other funds, and especially climate funds, the cooperation should be kept up and eventually strengthened to avoid duplication. And with regard to the NAP implementation support, the NAP processes are in general also instruments for the implementation of adaptation in the NDCs of these countries. This is something that should be, in our opinion, referenced in the project documents and also in the documents presented to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? So maybe to the issues on the table here, the request by Sweden to look at GEF 7 and how possibly SCCF work could be integrated in GEF 7. I'd just like to highlight that the GEF Trust Fund, as such, does not have a full mandate to say, maybe not in the legal, in the perfect legal way, but does not have a full mandate on adaptation. It is charged by the Council also with looking at mainstreaming resilience issues, but it does not have a full mandate, let's say, on adaptation measures. So we need to be clear what can be done and what cannot be done. I think your point is very valid in the sense that we have different funds, GCF, Adaptation Fund, not under the GEF for sure, but also served by the GEF Secretariat. We have the LDCF and other funds out there that are also looking at adaptation. There for sure is an discussion ongoing how we can best develop this fund's architecture. So I see that you put your flag up. Maybe you can clarify what we can do here in the Council and how we can charge this with further work on this one.
Thank you for this opportunity. No, our proposal, our first proposal is relates to look into whether relevant parts, not the whole SSCF. We are aware of that there are different mandates, but to look at how relevant parts of the SSCF activities and operations could be integrated. That's one. The second proposal was also relating to these positive results on the evaluation, to look at how, to ask the GEF Secretariat to present an action plan on how the SCCF could best assist developing countries absorb financing via GCF for scaling up of projects. So there are two proposals.
Gustavo, please.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think Philip already mentioned some of the complexities associated with SCCF and LDCF and its relations with the COP, and we derive a lot of what we do out of COP guidance, and so it's a bit more complicated. But certainly we have been engaging with the GCF Secretariat, as you probably heard in other sessions, and one of the topics, of course, is how our adaptation funds can help leverage and bring in GCF resources to scale them up. So this conversation is very much alive and well, and we hope that we will have some early wins in the future to report to.
UK, please.
Yes, thank you, Philip. Just to add to your very helpful distinctions here, and some of us are new to the Council. And these funds derive from different guidance from different parts of the machinery and are quite distinct from one another, as are their prerogatives and funding sources and mandates. So whereas it's appropriate to consider where programs may be blended, as it were, to the mutual benefit of both, as we have done with the LDCF and the Trust Fund, that's distinct from integration or any other verb which might imply fusing them in a more fundamental and possibly inappropriate way. So I'm sure, without putting words into Marita's mouth, that I think you were referring to investigating whether or not blending in the sense of the LDCF and the Trust Fund that's been done to date, rather than any more profound intermeshing of these things. Thank you.
Sorry for coming back. No, I'm not talking about LDCF at SCCF. So,
Okay, thanks a lot. So I would conclude here that we...
Thanks. I think I only heard one question, and that was the technical question about gender blindness by Jos and so on. So there is a scale that is quite widely used in the gender expert community, and we use the same scale here as we used in the gender mainstreaming evaluation in the GEF, and it ranges from gender blind, where there's no demonstrated awareness of gender issues, to gender awareness, to gender sensitive, and finally to gender mainstreamed, which has ensured that gender perspectives are central to most, if not all, activities. So that's an analytical scale that is being used quite widely these days. Thanks.
Well, thanks a lot. So I try to conclude this agenda point with the following issues. We will highlight in the highlights of the session that there's a need to look at how the SCCF and other funds, including GCF, how we can use synergies there on scaling up and working together. We will we do have actually 2 decisions were proposed in the documents you have before you. The first one on the annual monitoring review. I'm advised that it's not an absolutely necessary decision, but that the annual monitoring review, annual evaluation review will take place, as the name says, annually. And as the portfolio matures, it should be taken as a robust source of information and tool of decision making, but it is not absolutely necessary to have a decision on this one here in the Council. So, as it was proposed in the presentation by the IEO, if you agree, we don't have the decision here, but it will be taken forward in that understanding. On the other decision, on the evaluation of the Special Climate Change Fund, we would take the text as it is before us and adding actually 1 sentence at the end that says, or a part of a sentence that says, taking into account the management response, so that we have the full picture on the table, and the Council endorses the views fully. If this is agreeable to everybody, the decision would be approved, and we can move on to the next agenda item, which is budget. Please, Naoko.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So the last 2 items of this LDCF SCCF Council is actually the budget, and I would like to, in order to save time, and because we really want to finish this session sooner than later, we would like to ask that both the GEFSEC and the Independent Evaluation Office budget to be presented and to be discussed together. So which one do you want to go first? Gustavo. All right. So why don't you start?
Okay. Thank you, Naoko. So I'd like to introduce the administrative budget of the LDCF and SCCF for the fiscal year 2018. The document that you have is a report on the current year status of administrative resources on both funds, as well as the budget request to cover the activities of 4 units of the GEF pertaining to the 2 funds, the GEF Secretariat, the staff, the trustee, and the IEO. And you is here if you want some more details for the next fiscal year. The document includes the following requests for LDCF. It requests $1,044,509 for the GEF Secretariat, $128,000 for staff, $301 for the trustee, and $34,000 for the IEO. For SCCF, we request $483,026 for the GEF Secretariat, $128,000 for staff, and $131,000 for the trustee, in addition to $39,000 for the IEO. So the combined administrative budget would be $2.289 million for LDCF and SCCF. And I would like to highlight that that the budget that we have before you already includes the recently announced charges applied by the World Bank for the staff benefit recovery rate change from 50 to 70%. So that's already included there, and I conclude.
Thank you, Gustavo. May I ask, you had to come in?
Thanks very much. Just a reminder that we are working on a multi-annual budget that was introduced for IEO for the fiscal year 16-19 work program for our work on LDCF, SCCF. And for this year, fiscal year 17, so we had $112,000 budget that was approved, and we will be fully using the funds by the end of this fiscal year, which is by the end of next month. So a couple of words on our work program, and I try to be very brief. So the point is that the number of completed projects is increasing as the portfolio matures. So therefore, we have usually an increasing number of terminal evaluations to analyze. Now, you have noted that there were 5 this year, and that sounds a little bit funny, but it was an anomaly. We expect that there will be significantly more projects completed for the next time around. We will also disseminate the findings of the SCCF program evaluation. We will obviously edit and publish this report. We will report to the UNFCCC, and we will use other media also to disseminate the report. I would like to also point out that the IEO evaluations in the adaptation in the LDCF SCCF area will be feeding into OPS 6, and in addition there will be different looks at the adaptation activities in the OPS 6 as they pertain to the GEF main trust fund. So there's a two-way street there also. The policy and guidance that we are providing on LDCF, SCCF monitoring and evaluation is also closely linked to the guidance on terminal evaluations and the M&E policy of the GEF trust fund. So we will be expecting to revising and updating some of these documents relating to M&E and terminal evaluations during fiscal year 18 and spilling on to 19. So that's our work program. So we are requesting the approval of our budget of $73,000 for FY 18. We are well within the overall budget of approved $320,000 that was approved for the 4-year period. And as you see, the amount is actually decreasing now that the 2 program evaluations, the LDCF program evaluation was presented to you last year, and the SCCF program evaluation was presented now, so they are over. So now we go back to more of our annual evaluation report work and the policy and guidance work, as I have mentioned. Thank you. That's all from us.
Thank you so much, Juha. Now I would like to open the floor for questions and comments. Great. So in this case, silence means adoption. Thank you so much for the very quick approval of work plan and budgets. So it will. Any other business? Any other business for this one? Okay. All right. So shall we move on to any other business? All right. So one issue from GEF Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, I should have done this at the end of the Council meeting, but since it applies to the LDCF, SCCF also, it's not so much out of place. And that is the decision on the date for the 55th Council meeting. As you know, we always adopt this a year and a half in advance, so that everybody knows it and we can spread the word and hopefully others take it into account when they organize their own meetings. And so the proposal is that we should do it the week of December the 3rd, 2018. You have asked us not to do meetings in October because that's too early. Then November is taken up by both the UNFCCC COP and the CBD COP. So that leaves us the first week in December as the cleanest option. Was that clear? Yes, Josh, you have a question.
Just a reference to UNFCCC COP and CBD COP.
Well, as far as we were able to find out, the UNFCCC COP is scheduled for 5 to 16 November 2018, and the CBD COP for 14 to 27 November 2018. Is that correct? I don't have anything on the Green Climate Fund, but those are the things that we try to avoid clashes with at all costs. So that's the information we were able to get. In any case, they won't be in December, so that helps. Yes, Australia.
Just to assure you that the Green Climate Fund is currently only, its rules of procedure are that we only select dates for the next meeting at the current meeting. So there are no dates for the end of this year, let alone any next year. So no clash there.
No clash. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's we take it that those dates, 3 to 6 December 2018, are adopted for the 55th Council. Thank you so much.
Now we are distributing co-chair's summary. You already got one, right? So you can go ahead. Please. Yes, you're much better.
Okay, colleagues, we will wait about 5 minutes for you to look at the summary. We also are trying to distribute as quickly as possible the LDCF, SCCF joint summary, and then we will go para by para to approve it. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I would suggest that we go through the joint summary of the chairs of the 52nd GEF Council meeting. First of all, para by para. If you have any comments, if there are any unclarities, please raise your flag. Opening of the meeting, para 1. Election of the chairperson, para 2. Adoption of the agenda, para 3. Report of the chairperson of the STAP, para 4. Tackling global environmental challenges, para 5. Relations with conventions, para 6. Decisions approved, para 7. Para 8. Para 9. Then on the agenda item 11, the decisions approved, para 10. Para 11. Para 12. -- 13 and 14. Got on to the work program, agenda item 12, para 15. Para 16. So this is a long one. Spain, please.
I don't see the comment on the 8th item with regard that the Ethics Committee would include again in the next council meeting the Committee of Ethics because of the comments that were made.
Sorry to be late.
At the session, actually, my proposal was that we agree the decision as it was and put into the highlights of the session the comments that were made. And actually, I included there as well a reflection on the different points, including that, for example, the point you raised at that time, we need to review and specify who is considered an advisor, and if the provision on employment by the Secretariat should apply to advisors. And in the highlights, it's going to be specified that the Ethics Committee will come back with appropriate amendments, also concerning this issue on the policy, to be approved by the Council at its November session. The highlights will be issued under an AUKUS in my responsibility in a few days, next week. And I'm personally responsible to you that this will be taken care of. Thanks for your understanding. We are with para 17 now. (18), 19, 20, 21. We get to the agenda item 9 on semi-annual evaluation report and the decisions, para 22. Further on, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27.
Yeah. Sorry, I need to change one.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry to come back on this topic, but we've just been alerted to the fact that either we had the wrong date or the date for UNFCCC COP was changed since we looked at it, and it appears now on their website as being in December. So we can't have the 2018 Council in December. And so we propose to send you a decision by mail on that. We'll look for a good date. Looking at what there is, if CBD COP is indeed 14 to 27 November, then really the only week we have would probably be the first week in November, 6 to 8, 5 to 8, something like that. But we'll send you a decision by mail on this specific topic. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have a decision on the date, but we'll try to do this by written procedure. Yeah. So for the council session, I think we are done. Thank you very much. We will move now to the joint summary of the chairs of the LDCF and SCCF meeting. You have it in front of you. I give you 1 more minute to look at it. I see that you're very relaxed and very fast readers. So let's go para by para. 1, 2, 3, or maybe let me change the methodology. Are there any comments on the joint summary of the SCCF, LDCF? There are not. So we've done our business well. We are okay in time. Thank you very much from my side. Thanks for the support from the Secretariat, from NAOCO, and from, most of all, the Council. It was a pleasure to be your co-chair, and it's a little bit more work, and you need to have a little bit more overview, but finally it is, I think, it has been a pleasure really to work with you, and the spirit of collaboration is really great in the GEF Council, and I hope that this continues this way. Thanks a lot. Naoko, please.
Yeah, let me join Phil. First and foremost, thanking all of you. As I mentioned at the opening, this is at a very critical moment, defining moment, the last year of GEF 6, and we are looking ahead to GEF 7. And for the last 3 days, or including the first day, last 4 days, I think we really had a rich discussion. A lot of speakers that say science, evaluation, MEA, LDC chair, CSOs, and many of you have actually contributed and then made this discussion among council members. Council is so rich, so that then, and of course to you too, so that I really would like to appreciate and thank every one of you here to for your great collaboration and the spirit of cooperation, as just Phil mentioned. I actually really would like to thank Philip, my very able co-chair, and he really made us keep on track, and it's so good to keep everything on time and with very vigor management, and I felt really relaxed this time. So thank you, Philip. And I would like to really wish that everybody safe trip back, and we'll see you actually this November, end November. Thank you so much, and thanks to Philip.
Okay, before you go, just a few announcements. First, to remind that the 53rd session of the Council is for 28-30 November. You remember we had to change it because it overlapped with UNEA in Nairobi. So we've advanced it by a week to 28 to 30 November this year. That's the 53rd Council. Then the informal GEF 7 replenishment meeting will take place in this room. Only representatives of the donor countries, plus the 2 representatives of the recipient countries who normally participate, are invited. Everybody else, please refrain. The KM Advisory Group will meet from 3 to 5 p.m. MC C2 131. So you go down 2 floors and look for the meeting room 131. And lunch is ready in the atrium for everybody. Thank you very much. Replenishment meeting 1 to 3. 1 to 3. In this room. So you need to take a quick lunch. The donors have to eat fast.